Bonjour, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are listening into this webinar. This is a series of webinars that has been organized by the Africa Methane Community of Practice. And just a short intro on what the African Methane Community of Practice is. It's a very important aspect of an action against short-lived climate pollutants. And AMCoP is an African-led network uniting governments, practitioners, civil society, the private sector, and communities to tackle non-CO2 emissions, focusing on methane from agriculture, energy, and waste. As we all know, methane is a lot more serious than the more popular CO2 in warming the planet, and in itself significantly more dangerous for the planet in the short run. And cutting methane is the fastest way to slow climate change and improve air quality. The African Methane Community of Practice is hosted at the Environmental Compliance Institute and is led at the core of it by the Stockholm Environmental Institute, University of Pretoria, Strathmore University, Université Félix Houphouët-Boigny. We work together with UNEP, the regional office, and it's funded by the Global Methane Hub. Today, we'll be exploring the state of methane in Africa as part of the work package that is a deliverable of the work that has been funded by the Global Methane Hub. And as I have indicated, it's an African-led network for mitigating CO2 emissions. And AMCoP responds to the African Ministerial Conference on the Environment calls for integrated and coordinated approaches to tackling air pollution, climate change, including non-CO2 emissions, and provides a complementary platform that supports implementation of Africa Clean Air Program pillars, data systems, research and capacity, policy and legal frameworks, information, education, monitoring and evaluation. For today, our moderator is going to be Dr. Kenza Homsi, who's an international expert in climate, air quality, and environmental health. She leads Morocco's efforts towards a sustainable economy as the national coordinator for UN's Partnership for Action on Green Economy, known as PAGE. She holds 2 PhDs, an engineering degree, and a master's in applied mechanics. And she integrates science and policy to tackle environmental challenges. She previously headed the climate change and air quality departments at Morocco's Meteorology Agency. And globally, Dr. Homsi advises institutions such as the World Meteorological Organization, Climate and Clean Air Coalition, and the Global Methane Hub. Her work focuses on early warning systems, health benefits of climate action, and connecting scientific research with practical policy solutions. Over to you, Dr. Homsi.
Thank you so much, Victor. Salam alaikum, bonjour, hello everyone, and good morning, good afternoon from Casablanca, Morocco, and good evening, wherever you are in the world. So it's my pleasure to welcome you to this high-level webinar on exploring the state of knowledge of methane management in Africa, which is convened, as mentioned by my colleague Victor, by the African Methane Community of Practice. So big thanks to the Community of Practice, and big thanks to our partners, and big thanks to you, and thank you for coming and attending this webinar. So our role today is to make the methane relatable in Africa, make it relevant, and make it be and make it seen and visible. Before starting our webinar, I would like to invite Mr. Mohammed Sultan to give welcoming remarks. And Mr. Mohammed Sultan is a development professional With 15 years of experience working on economic and social justice and progress, he focuses on the intersection of justice, economic opportunity, as well as social and cultural dynamics. Mohammed is currently the regional lead Africa at the Global Methane Hub. And Mohammed, the floor is yours, please.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Kenza, for that very kind introduction, and Victor and the team at ECI for convening us, and obviously the AMCoP. Please, if you're having trouble hearing me, let me know. I think my mic is a bit low. But yeah, good morning, everyone, and good afternoon, wherever you are. And again, let me thank the organizers and the AMCoP for bringing us together, as well as everyone that's connecting from across the continent and beyond. It's really a pleasure to be here. And I will try to be brief so that we leave room for the actual people that know what they're talking about to move us on. But my name is Mohammed Sultan, and I'm the Africa lead at the Global Methane Hub. And we are a philanthropic initiative that is dedicated to embedding methane management into broader climate action to accelerate impact on both climate and development on the ground. And we focus on the three sectors where the bulk of human-driven emissions originate from: so energy, agriculture, and waste. And together, these account for about 60% of human-caused methane emissions. And our goal is really to support the kinds of ambitious investments that lay the groundwork for long-term transformation for our planet, but importantly for people as well at the core. And as you can imagine, as you all know, these three sectors are really critical to Africa's progress and overall development. And so inevitably, right, we must work towards increasing and improving food and nutrition security, building safer cities, and strengthening energy security. And these are really imperative developmental matters. But as we do that, right, our emissions profile is changing. Globally for methane, we're looking at about 14% of emissions, which is higher than our comparative CO2 emissions. And I need to caveat this by saying that our per capita emissions are obviously well below global average, and therefore we need to stress kind of the need for everyone to play their role accordingly globally to reduce these emissions. I think it's a matter of fairness, but it's also a matter of efficiency and impact on the ground ultimately. And speaking of that impact, methane is particular because the immediate effects of addressing methane emissions is felt in a much more localized way than it would be for CO2. And let me also caveat again that the long-term goal is very much to decarbonize and to move towards more sustainable and diversified economies that are more resilient. But as we do that, methane provides a particular opportunity in that, one, it has an immediate effect on the opportunity to lower the rate of warming. But as I said, the effects on people are much more localized. And so if we are seeing a growth pattern, a developmental pattern where emissions continue to grow, it is also an indication of probably a need to adjust because it means greater vulnerability. But in many cases, it is also an indication of a lower productivity and competitiveness and higher risks, particularly health and other environmental risks. But globally, we know that reducing emissions globally by 50% over the next 20 years allows us the opportunity to lower kind of the rate of global warming by 0.3 degrees. And this is really, really important for many African countries who are facing extreme climate events, and they're spending enormous amounts of resources to countervene, deviating them from other very much needed investments in social and economic development. And so this is important for many reasons for us, first and foremost, in our growth and development pathway. But this also kind of brings me to the importance of AMCoP. And the reason why we need to elevate African expertise, voices, build agency, and sustainability. We're seeing across the board sort of meaningful opportunities to engage in the three sectors that we mentioned earlier that reinforce development. Waste management, advancing circular economy approaches that help create jobs, improve quality, air quality, address critical sanitation needs. And we've seen that come out very heavily at the AUC summit recently, the importance of water and sanitation to help restore dignity, particularly for those without access to basic services. All these have a methane footprint, and improving their efficiency reduces the footprint as an essential side benefit, one could say. In agriculture, we know that we can boost productivity while managing emissions, whether it's through better water management and rice production or improving animal health. animal feed, grazing. We can meet the goals that the CADEP has laid out of increasing productivity to reduce imports of food whilst bending the curve of emissions. That is really important also for our social and economic activities in the food sector, on top of the importance of food and nutrition for people's everyday lives. And in energy, look, we're looking at the necessity to really diversify our energy mixes. But as we do that, already 80% of new generation capacity is coming from renewables. But as we do continue to expand access to electricity, productive electricity through diversified means, the necessity to stop leaks, flaring, venting in existing operations, reducing waste, improving regulations is really critical, both from an environmental and climate perspective, but also one could argue from a competitiveness perspective for many African countries. And so, I will end with saying that we see at the Global Methane Hub the opportunity to bring together this community practice as being essential in helping to coordinate and elevate in three quite consequential areas. The first one is on data and measurement. Navigating the rapid changes in remote sensing and ground measurements, and ensuring that we have African institutions that are fully present and participating with meaningful contributions to global dialogues, but also to reinforce domestic capacity. That's really critical. The second is in finance and getting kind of a better grasp of the opportunities, both in public and private funding. And that includes a variety of things, right? It includes looking at sustainable business and economic models for small and medium enterprises that are entering the sustainable and circular economy space that also creates jobs. But it also means looking at issues related to the cost of capital necessary for capital expenditures or management improvements in other areas that require larger set of investments. And these seem different, but they're related to us being able to meet the financial need, both from internal and domestic resources, but also by engaging in the kinds of partnerships that leverage every dollar or every unit of currency that we are looking to raise for these purposes. And the last part, which is equally critically important, is governance, right? Ensuring that we've got global accountability for action and equity for a global distributed impact. And this is accountability at a national level, at a sector level, at a community level, but also very much so in engaging global spaces and discussions where we can forge more distributed partnerships and a clear oversight on data and finance in particular as well. And so having this group match domestic expertise with the social and economic ambitions of people across policy, practice, and oversight capacity across the continent, for us at the Global Methane Hub is really an important part of this ownership and agency that resides within the continent. And we're seeing this ambition manifest in many, many different ways. And so we're happy and proud to support this process. Very much looking forward to continue this journey with you. And so let me thank you, Kenza, for the time you've allotted me and for the team for inviting us to say a few words, and hand it back over to the rest of the team. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for your time, Mohammed, and thank you for sharing. And definitely thank you for the Global Methane Hub for supporting a holistic approach to methane in Africa. And in Africa, most methane, and I liked when you mentioned like the different sectors from which methane is coming in Africa and also globally, and what we are doing. And indeed, most of methane, and this is what is maybe special for Africa, is that most methane doesn't come from fancy new technologies, but it comes mainly from sectors we live with every day, like livestock, waste, oil and gas. And this means that we need to find solutions in everyday decisions. And this is maybe what is a little bit different in Africa. And this is something that we need to be aware of and work on. And we need to be aware that there is science behind methane and science behind methane in Africa as well. So today it's about turning methane science into stories, tools, policies that actually work on the ground. And this is why we have this dialogue, or this webinar that we wanted as a dialogue. And I would like to ask for the slide related to the objectives related to the dialogue, so that we will formally agree on this objective. So indeed, this is our contract. It's a webinar, but we want it to be a dialogue, because by the end, what we are looking forward today is an African wisdom about methane management. And the objectives are like to highlight Africa's methane emissions profile across key sectors, and discuss why methane action has become a strategic priority, because we are aware that it is today. Then showcase the specific tools currently being used for methane management in Africa. Then explore specific or sector-specific policy options for national plans alongside a multi-stakeholder dialogue on regional collaboration, then financing pathways and thematic priorities, and also present. There will be also story times where we will present case studies from Kenya and Nigeria, demonstrating practical lessons, innovations, and opportunities for scaling action. So there will be technical presentations, and these technical presentations will summarize the key points on the state of methane management in Africa based on scientific literature review. We will exchange questions and discuss. There will be case studies and story time, as I said, and then stakeholder analysis. And we will use for this, and as long as I said, we want it to be a dialogue or a space for dialogue, we want it to be a collective reflection, and we need the collective brain. So our brain today is a tool which is Mentimeter. And indeed, in the Mentimeter, you will have set of questions that you will need to reply to or answer, and then share also your prompt if there are any, and also there will be a place for questions and answer Q&A placed in Zoom. So if you have a question, don't wait for the end, drop it in the Q&A as soon as it pops into your head, and we will come back to as many as we can. So also we will share some links in the chat as speakers mentioned, tools, reports, or case studies. We will share the survey to access the capacity building needs about methane in Africa. And we will have a large discussion at the end to hear your voices as well. But before moving further, let's first try the Mentimeter. So this is our tool, as I said, this is our collective brain, as I said. So let's try the Mentimeter. The slide related to the Mentimeter first. Yeah, so please, this is a barcode for Mentimeter. So either you scan this barcode and you will find yourself with the question, where are you from? And please share with us, where are you from on Mentimeter, so that we will keep a good summary of who is here today. Or just you type the website, www.menti.com, and then you insert the code in the place of the code, and then you find the question to answer. Please share with us on Menti, where are you joining from? Okay, so I will give 1 minute for this. It could be LinkedIn, it could be Instagram. I must admit I'm not a fan of social media, but just I can try today to be fan of it. So just let's imagine that methane has a social media profile, and there is an introduction of methane. So what would the social media profile say? Small gas, maybe. Big impact for sure. Invisible, definitely. And looking for serious policy relationships across Africa. And this is exactly what we are here to arrange today. So I want you to see this webinar as a set of segments, and each segment is helping us to reflect on something that we want to put on the methane's wall on the social media. We don't want you just to listen today. We want you to challenge, inspire, so that we get a sharper picture of what methane action in Africa should look like. So please think about methane as having a social media profile. Share on the wall of the methane on the chat, and I will be following your inputs. And after each segment, I will allow 1 to 2 minutes so that I will read what you have posted on the methane's wall. So let's move ahead, and then we will start our first segment. And our first segment is about current and potential future trajectories of methane emissions. And we will look at where methane is coming from in Africa and where it is hidden if we do nothing. And we will write something about this on the methane's wall. To do so, I will invite Professor Rebecca Garland, who is professor in the Department of Geography. Rebecca?
Okay, thank you very much, Kenza. Greetings, everyone. Sorry.
One moment, Rebecca, please. So I was just introducing you and I will tell you something as well. So I was just checking if you are here and you are listening to me or hearing me okay. Yeah, so Rebecca is a professor in the Department of Geography, Geoinformatics and Meteorology at the University of Pretoria in South Africa. She has a background in atmospheric chemistry with a focus on air quality and climate change and science policy linkages. And I have a surprise for you, Rebecca. So you have 15 minutes, right? So you have 15 minutes to share. But after 13 minutes, I will put my hat. So please keep an eye on me. If you see that I put this hat like this, please wrap up. Okay? So the floor is yours.
Thank you, Kenza. I think I want to go over time just so I can see the hat. Greetings, everybody from South Africa. Thank you for joining us today. So I'm going to start with just our initial analysis with some of the data that's available to better understand the methane emissions. We have already heard from Mohammed a lot of the key points, but today I'll highlight some of the quantitative information. So we're going to today have a high-level look at Pan-African methane emissions, both looking current and some of the scenarios going into the future. In order to do this, there's a variety of different emission inventories that we can use and that we've looked at. But today, because we wanted a real Pan-African view, we'll show two of them, EDGAR and the African Assessment. Both of them I will explain as I come to them. Both of these provide country level and regional emissions, and they're both comprehensive emission inventories. We wanted to look to assess some general trends. Future work will look into sector-specific emission inventory. And particularly when we get to the African Assessment, but we'll see it coming out in EDGAR as well. The key sectors, I'm already giving you the answer kind of before you start. Agriculture, charcoal, production, energy in general, and waste management really come up. Next slide, please. Okay, so first to introduce, EDGAR is the first emissions inventory where we'll show some results from. So EDGAR is a emission inventory. It's an independent one developed in Europe. And it's one that, you know, as an air quality modeler, we use quite often kind of as default emissions. They provide gridded inventories, but they also provide summaries per sector and per country as well. And so we're using the one you can see kind of the link at the bottom. We're using from the GHG emission inventory, which includes methane. And this has summaries per country, but also, as I said, per region. One thing to note, this is done in a consistent manner across the globe. And so it's really good for comparisons. However, you know, we do have to question how much local data is included and has this been ground truth against local data. But we'll come back to that at the end as well. So on the next slide, we'll start to see some of the general results. So if we just start to look at the Pan-African emissions, so this is total Africa, the methane emissions from 1970 going to 2023, and the colored bars that you see are the different sectors. Blue is energy, the green is agriculture, red is waste, and orange is industry, but there's very few emissions, so we don't see from that. And what we see is, as already noted previously by Mohammed, we see this increase in emissions, and we see it reflected in EDGAR. We also see that the blue, the energy, there is variety. It's not as increasing as greatly as, say, the green, which is the agriculture, forestry, and other land use, as well as waste. So on the next slide, we start to see these now broken down geographically. Oh, sorry. First, we do have our first Mentimeter question. So if you're not into Mentimeter, you can scan the code again. If you're already in there, you can answer the question. As you'll see, you can go through the Mentimeter questions at your own time, but we'll also prompt when they're related to what we're talking about. So next slide, please. So this is the first of results. I'll show just a series of maps here to give an initial view of the geographical distribution of emissions. So the first slide I showed were the total emissions across the continent. These now are the geographical representation. For these maps, you'll always have 1990, 2000 in the middle, 2023 on the right-hand side. And then within the map, the legends are comparable, but between slides, the legends do change, just so you have that in mind. So first, if we look across energy, we see from 1990 to 2023, there has been, you know, some changes across the continent, and where we would expect larger emissions, we do see those. On the next slide now, we're going to dive down into the solid fuels in particular. So this is where solid fuel use, but also charcoal would be included. And so we see a country such as South Africa really prominent, but other growing emissions as well in East and Central Africa coming through as we go into 2023. Next slide then is looking into energy, oil, and natural gas. And this was an interesting one. We can see, according to Edgar, some of the emissions increase. Nigeria then decreases some, but we still have other areas where there are increases seen. The next slide moves on to the waste. And I find this one really interesting. So we've been talking, this is one of the key sectors to look into. And so we can see from 1990 to 2000, not as many changes, but then up until 2023, we do see quite a few countries getting much more darker purple. And in this case, for us, darker purple are the higher emissions. So we do see this increase. And we saw it across the Pan-African, the line graph I showed at the beginning as well. On the next slide, we also then see for agriculture, for Afolo, similar type of trends. I think the 1990, 2000, we start to see some increases in emissions and then greater emissions even in 2023. So there's a lot we can learn from these maps. We're going through them quickly just to really provide a snapshot. Next, we're going to look into what about future scenarios? So Edgar is looking at the current scenarios, but the integrated assessment of air pollution, climate change for sustainable development in Africa, or as we call it, the assessment, or the Africa assessment, because that's a really long title. The African assessment looked both current for historical and then into the future. And particularly looking into the future, how can we achieve the goals that are set out in Agenda 2063 towards the Africa that we want? Not just from a development pathway, but including air quality, climate and GHG and SLCP emissions and impacts as well. And so to do this, we developed some harmonized scenarios, using the LEAP model. There's a lot of information in the assessment. When I'm done talking, I will put the link in for everybody to read. But what I'm going to highlight today are just some of the key aspects related to methane for the baseline scenario. And the baseline scenario really just reflects what would happen if we keep doing what we've been doing. And so we do have interventions, we do have policies, but there aren't many changes past that. Agenda 2063 scenario is what if we have a concerted effort to really focus on methane and other SLCPs, as well as air pollution. I do want to note across all of these scenarios, the development scenario, the population GDP, those do not change. It's only the mitigation measures and if they're implemented or not that change on these. And as I said, I will put the I'll put the link to the assessment when I'm finished. So quickly after that quick introduction, just a few examples, some of the results from the assessment. On the next slide, what we start to see is, so here's another question. I forgot where I put the questions. Of the four main sectors, which do you think is the hardest to control? And we're asking you to rank. As we're thinking about that, then the next slide comes to, from the African assessment, if we look now from 2020 all the way looking forward to 2060, this now is methane emissions in the baseline scenario. The different colors here are the different regions within Africa. And so you can see from 2020 to 2010 to 2020, we see some increases, not many, but then it really does start to pick up. And so if we continue as we're going, these projections are, we will have large increases in methane emissions. And then on the next slide, what it highlights is the same aspect, but now these striped lines, these are if in Agenda 2063, how many of the emissions could be avoided if we implement the 37 measures, if we implement measures to decrease methane, SLCPs, other SLCPs, and air pollutants. And so what we can see from this is that in a concerted scenario, like the Agenda 2063, we do have large emission reduction potentials across all of the regions where we really can stop this large increase in methane emission. The next slide now breaks up similarly, both historic and into the future. So you see the x-axis is the same, but now we're looking at the sectors. And so we can see Going into the future, very similar to what I showed from the Edgar results, is that this time agriculture is kind of this medium orange in the middle that is really growing as we go into 2063. Waste, which is the dark orange at the bottom, also we can really see that it's starting to grow. So we see the same total methane, but now instead of regions, we see it by the sectors. And once again, this is one thing to note, this is consistent with the Edgar results that we showed earlier as well. Then on the next slide, I show something very similar as we did before, that in Agenda 2063, right, if we implement these measures, we can get strong decreases. Large emission reduction potential does exist in order to keep methane emissions from growing so. On the next slide, we have now how these would grow from the baseline in 2010, which is on your left-hand side, the baseline in 2060, which is in the middle, and then the Agenda 2063 scenario in 2060 on the right-hand side. We have the regions on the bottom and then the sectors. And so now we have all the information kind of that I've shown, but in one graph, where we can see if we go from the baseline in 2020 on the left-hand side, where East Africa and West Africa have higher emissions than the other regions, but all of the regions definitely see an increase as we go into the baseline 2060, which is in the middle. But then with the mitigation, we can have large increases. There's large emission reduction potential across all sectors and across all of the different regions within Africa. So this summarizes those two aspects together. On the next slide, I'd like to just have one deep dive into agriculture. So we've mentioned agriculture quite a lot. We've mentioned also that I've shown it's one of the sectors that grows a lot, but there also is a large mitigation potential here. And so what we have here again is the 2020 on the left-hand side, the baseline in 2060 in the middle, the mitigation 2060 on the right-hand side. Now the colors though are the different types of emissions. And so we can see that this dark brown really is driving a lot of the increases. And that's the enteric fermentation that happens related to livestock. And we see very large increases in the baseline. However, there are ways to mitigate it if we look towards the Agenda 2063. So before we go to the next slide, I don't want Terrence to show it yet. You know, as this is from livestock and from cows and such, one of the answers to mitigate this potential is to eat less meat. However, that is not the only mitigation scenario. I know not everyone wants to become a vegetarian who's in the audience. And so then in the assessment, Terrence, next slide, please. We do show, you know, this can be controlled through a lot of different avenues. So on the left-hand side, in the agriculture, this is a lot of detail, I know, but I wanted to highlight that the assessment has quite a lot of detail in it. I've been showing that we can do these mitigation reductions, but to show that there's more detail also within the assessment. But back to agriculture, one does not everybody needs to become a vegetarian for this, but there are other ways that we can control this really growing enteric fermentation. That as the population grows, as people get richer in Africa, there could be more meat eating, but there's other ways to decrease these emissions through, such as listed here, via productivity increases, linked to increased food digestibility, animal weights, fertility rates, lots of other aspects that can be explored. I also wanted to highlight that, for example, within the assessment, we find the specific measures for, say, waste management, that things like methane capture on all wastewater treatment plants can have a large decrease in emissions as well. The next at the top is then oil and gas, that in the 2063 scenario, we can have large decreases in fugitive emissions. And same for charcoal making, that there are specific measures within the assessment to show how to get to these reductions in emissions. And so then the next slide, before I close, I just want to highlight that we've only shown today Edgar and the assessment, and we know that there's a lot more information out there. We just only have so much time today to highlight this. One that I wanted to note and bring to the audience members' attention is that also there's this recent paper out that if you really like data, like I like data, you might find it really interesting. It's the Global Methane Budget from 2000 to 2020, and it highlights summary of observations of emission inventories by sources and regions, by emission inventories, as well as by methods, those calculated from bottom up, as well as top down. And so you can get for one region, say for anthropogenic methane emissions, a range of sources of an estimated emissions. And this gives us an indication of the uncertainty. And when we look at this, we really find that there is a lot of uncertainty in a lot of these emissions. So many of what we've said with these large increases is a robust finding. However, there's uncertainty around it. And again, we come back to the question I asked at the very beginning, like, were local or ground truth inputs used in order to estimate the emission inventory? And on my final slide, which is next, that's one of the key, I think, concluding thoughts going forward, and maybe one of the key options as well that I would recommend that, we start looking into. So I have it highlighted in bold. We do see across the emission inventories, we look at these increasing emissions, but there are uncertainties and there are gaps, and there really is a need for local data. And the priorities of what is the most important data that we need can differ across countries. And this would be something we'd be really interested for the community to practice, to look into together. So the inputs and the findings that we see here, must be ground truth using local African data. And then I'll just note, there's a lot of information that I've shown, a lot of data. The website will be launched soon, and we'll be able to share information on that there. If you follow the LinkedIn page or join the mailing list, you will be able to access it. And we will, if we haven't already, provide those links, as well as links to the capacity needs assessment. And my very, very last slide before I hand over to Kenza is just one more question about emissions that, as I said, we've only shown a couple of the sources here. There's other important sources of methane emissions. Please do let us know. And with that, I thank you very much for my time and hand back over to Kenza.
Yeah, thank you so much, Rebecca, and thank you for your knowledge. And Alini, I'm just thinking, so now if I want, and I'm asking everyone, first of all, to share if they have any questions, to share it in the Q&A space, and join me to update the social media profile of Methane. And just I will share with you, Rebecca, what I have thought about, and then tell me if it is wrong or correct, or if I got it correct. So just, I'm thinking like writing today's post from Africa. Methane is getting strength from three places: cows and other livestock, oil and gas and flaring, and landfills and dump sites, you said waste. If nothing changed, methane keep growing with economies or with our country's economy. So is this correct? Should I add something that I have missed?
Like our social post, I would like us to also be positive that there are actions we can take to decrease it into the future. But yes.
Excellent, definitely,
Thanks,
Rebecca. So there are actions we can use. Thank you for your presentation. Thank you for this word, because this is what will open also the path and the way for our second segment. And here I will call Evelyn to talk about tools used for methane management in. But before this, I will just allow 2 minutes for people to write on the chat if they have, or like what kind of message they want to write on methane's wall on social media. And I saw questions already coming on Q&A. Thank you for this. And please interact with us to make this, as I said, a collective wisdom. So, Evelyn, do you hear me okay? Are you there?
Yes, I can hear you.
Excellent. So now we are moving to our second segment, which is about the tools used for methane management in Africa. And it's kind of, we are moving from what is the problem, so what to what is in our toolbox. And I think in Africa, I mean, this awareness about methane started before, and there are tools and measures that were already used and taken. And Evelyn, you will talk to us about this. You will showcase some of these key tools that are currently in use and how this can support decision making. And Evelyn Uyangu, you are a research officer at the Environment Compliance Institute, where you support multidisciplinary work on environmental monitoring and methane initiatives that strengthen sustainability and community resilience, including our AMCoP. So, Evelyn, don't forget the hat rule. So you have 15 minutes. At 13 minutes, I will put my hat, and then you will need to prepare in 2 minutes. So Evelyn, please, the floor is yours. And then I will just, one thing, I will just remind the attendees to add their questions in the Q&A space, and also share whatever they want to write on the social media post as Istamsa. The floor is yours, dear Evelyn.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, depending on where you're joining us from. Welcome to this session where I'll be presenting on the tools and the inventories used for methane management in Africa. Methane is a short-lived climate pollutant with a much higher global warming potential than carbon dioxide. So because of this reason, it is good to, it is good to improve on how we measure, how we report, and how we manage our emission, because it is critical for the climate action, the air quality, and also for sustainability. So the next slide, please. I'll delve into the tools and the inventories. First of all, I'll explain and differentiate between the tools and the inventories. So when we talk about the methane tools, we are referring to the technologies, the models, the databases, and the systems that help us to detect, to measure, analyze, and report methane emissions. So these tools make it possible to understand where the emissions are coming from and how best the issues can be addressed. And the main purpose for the tools is to support accurate measurement, and also it helps for estimation, reporting for the emissions. Now, when we look at the inventories, because they are different from the tools, the inventories are structured estimates from the different sectors like agriculture, waste, energy, oil and gas. These are the official records that countries used to report emissions and planning mitigation actions. The purpose of an inventory is to serve as an official baseline or reporting framework for emissions removals. And so in this case, inventories are the official records that are used for national and international reporting. So next slide. So in simple terms, we see that the tools help to generate or improve the inventories. The tools detect, they measure, they estimate, and then they provide the data to the inventory for the annual totals, the sectoral data, and so forth and so forth. So then we also have different categories. Kindly, if you move to the next slide. We have different categories of the methane measuring, reporting, and verification tools. We have the satellite-based tools, we have modeling platforms, we have databases, and each plays a different role and operates at different levels of the MRV system. So when we look at the satellite-based tools, these are tools that use remote sensing, and they detect methane concentrations in the atmosphere. And they are useful where ground monitoring is limited. They are top-down in nature. When I say top-down in nature, I mean they observe methane concentrations directly from the atmosphere and attribute the emissions to the regions or sectors, which is useful for identifying hotspots and also validating reported emissions. For the modeling platforms, they simulate emission based on activity data, emission factors, and sectoral processes. These are important where direct measurement is difficult. They are largely bottom-up, meaning they estimate emissions by aggregating activity data, such as livestock numbers, waste generation, or energy use, and apply emission factors to calculate total methane emission. Bottom-up refers to the building estimates from the non-human activities on the ground upwards. So that's the difference between top-down and bottom-up. Bottom-up observation is from the atmosphere, then the bottom-up is from the ground upwards. When we look at the databases, this compile national global emission data using standard methodologies. And the databases sit in between the two approaches, like the bottom up and the top down. So it uses bottom up when data is derived or reported from the ground upward, from the atmosphere downwards. But when you use top down elements, so this is informed by the satellites observation or global modeling. Together, these categories are complementary. They complement each other. The satellites provide independent checks. The modeling platforms translate activities into policy relevant estimates, and the database provide the structured data, forming a coherent monitoring and verification system when integrated. Now, we are going to look at tools that we use for methane management in Africa. We have several tools that are used in Africa, and we also have other tools. Next slide, please. We also have other tools that are used in other continents, but specifically we are talking about Africa. So we have around 12, and kindly, if you don't see any tool that is here and it is used, you can also get in touch and inform us and let us know how it is used. We have EDGAR. I'm not going to talk about EDGAR because Rebecca has already spoken about it. Now we have Sentinel, 5P Tropomi. I'm just mentioning, and then I'll go to each and every one of them explaining briefly. So we have Sentinel, Tropomi, we have Faustat, we have LEAP, we have CCSC mitigation tools, we have EIA Global Methane Tracker, we have COMAT, WestMap, IPCC Fast Order Decay, IMEO Methane Alert Response System, and UNFCCC National Inventory Records and biannual reports. So let's start by looking at the Sentinel Tropomi. Rebecca has already spoken about EDGAR, so I think I'll skip that for the sake of time. Next slide, please. Let's look at the Sentinel. Okay, here is a Mentimeter question for you. Kindly, you can answer it. Which of these tools, the ones that I've mentioned above, which of these tools do you use for methane management, where you are from your country or wherever you are? You can answer that, and then at the end of it, you're going to see if those tools are some of the tools that you use there, or you have different tools in the place that you're in. So let us look at the tools one by one. Next slide. This is the Sentinel Tropomi. It is important to distinguish that there's a difference between the Sentinel and the Tropomi, though they are two in one. The Sentinel 5P is the satellite platform where the spacecraft orbiting the Earth enables the observation to take place. Then the Tropomi is the instrument or the sensor that is on board. So it is on board the Sentinel 5P. It essentially measures methane concentrations from the space and converts the spectral signals into usable data sets. This makes it extremely valuable for identifying emission hotspots and also for validating national inventories. All right, let's go to the next one. So for the Faustat, this Faustat methane emissions database, this compiles agricultural activity data, livestock populations, rice cultivation, manure management, and it applies the IPCC emission factors, basically the values that tell how much methane is released from specific human activity, and in that way, it estimates the methane emissions. It also, sorry, I have a cold, so I keep on, my voice is a bit hoarse. It provides standardized agricultural methane estimates using globally consistent methodologies. And it matters because it is used as a baseline for agricultural emissions, and it can also be used for cross-checking by different countries when they're checking on emissions. Then we have the next one, which is LEAP. LEAP is a planning tool that allows countries to model future energy pathways and associated methane emissions under different policy scenarios. It integrates energy demand, supply, and emission factors to project future emissions and mitigate scenarios. It is good because it can be used for long-term planning, and also it can be used in policy making or simulation. Let's move to the next one, which is CCSC, if I'm not wrong. Yeah. CCSC mitigation tools. These tools model emissions activity and emission factors scenarios to identify high impact interventions. The tools are designed to move countries from measurements to taking action. They help in identifying mitigation opportunities by modeling emissions, reducing scenarios across sectors, particularly waste and agriculture, which are dominant for methane emissions in Africa. It is good because it has a direct policy relevant, and it can also support mitigation for planning for different countries. Yeah, so as you can see, they use the LEAP calculator here. They also look at HFC, which is hydrofluorocarbon strategy that aims at reducing the HFCs in the atmosphere, which is a good mitigation strategy. So let us move to the next one. This is the IEA Methane Tracker, International Energy Tracker. The IEA Methane Tracker is a global reference for energy sector. It's mainly used in the energy sector. I can see my time is going up. Okay, let me be fast. It integrates multiple data sources, and it combines satellite data, national statistics, and industry reports. So it matters because it has a global coverage, because it is widely cited. I can see, Kenza, your hat, it's nice. I can see it. It highlights priority areas for mitigation. Yeah, so let's be a bit fast. I'll move a bit fast because of time. We are at, next slide, please. UNFCCC, National Inventory Records and Biennial Reports. They consolidate country-level activity data emission factors that provide standardized, internationally recognized methane emissions. These reports are essential for tracking progress, meeting transparency requirements, and also inform global mitigation strategies. The national inventory records are typically submitted annually for Annex 1 countries, and the biennial reports are submitted every 2 years for non-annex countries. So let us move on to the next slide. We have the methane assessment reporting system that is focused mainly on waste sector. The methane assessment reporting system, this integrates waste activity data, and it estimates methane from solid waste systems and evaluates the mitigation options. It's particularly useful. It's particularly useful for improving landfill management and also composting programs, and it can also be used for urban methane planning. Yep, next slide. We have the COMAT, Country Methane Abatement Tool. This is a decision support accounting tool that allows countries to estimate methane, identify mitigation options, and also quantify abatement potential. It takes national activity data and applies emission factors for both the current emissions and the potential reductions from various interventions. So it supports national monitoring and verification climate planning. It highlights high impact mitigation options and also bridges data policy. Next slide. We have waste map, which is used in the waste sector. It is used for modeling and planning, and it estimates emission from landfills, composting, organic waste management. It allows countries and municipalities to quantify methane emissions from waste and evaluate impact of interventions like composting, anaerobic digestion, and so forth. So therefore, it's a practical tool for waste sector planning and mitigation priorities. The next slide. The IPCC first order decay. This is a model that estimates methane from organic waste over time, and it is based on the principle that decomposition occurs proportionately to the remaining degradable material. So this model has a scientific backing for estimating landfill emissions, and it captures time dynamics of waste decomposition, making it accurate than simple static methods. So it is good because it is scientifically backed, and this makes it accurate because anything that is scientifically backed, you can replicate it, and different countries can do similar thing and still get the same results. And the last one, we have the IMEO. The IMEO, this one integrates measurement-based data from the satellites, industries, and scientific studies. It focuses on improving accuracy, transparency of methane emissions globally. It is shifting the field towards measurement-based methane reporting, and it combines satellite observations and industry data. It also closes these gaps between reported and actual emissions, and that is good because it strengthens the transparency and the MRV credibility worldwide. So, next slide. This is just an overview of the sectoral methane tools that are used in Africa. Some are used in agricultural sector, some are used in waste, some are used in energy, oil and gas, and some are cross-cutting. So I think because of time, I'll move a bit fast. I can see Kenza's heart staring at me. So move to the next slide, kindly. So for the summary, we all know that every tool here has strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and also threats. For the strengths, they provide structure and comparability. They support national reporting. Most tools are open access. For the weaknesses, we have technical capacity gaps. We have high cost of advanced tools. For the opportunities, Africa can leapfrog into scientific MRV rapid trainings. We can also unlock the Tier 2 and Tier 3 accuracy. For the threats, there is an inconsistent data of reliance of default emission factors. And the last one, climate finance not aligned with MRV needs. So here we have another Mentimeter question. Kindly answer. What is the most important information needed for monitoring, reporting, verification for methane management in Africa? Kindly scan, or just if you've already scanned, you just answer. Let's move to the next slide. I think this is the last one. For the concluding thoughts, the tools operate as complementary ecosystem. They are not competing, they're complementing each other, where each tool feels and plays a different distinct part of the MRV chain. For the NRI and the BURs, these are the official source of country-approved methane data. The global baseline datasets such as EDGAR, FAUSTAT, EIA give comparable figures across all countries. And the satellite and the verification tools, IMEO and the others, provide independent view of methane, hotspots, and super emitters. And finally, planning and mitigation tools such as LEAP, IPCC First Order, help the governments to design and to design scenarios, estimate reductions, and plan sector interventions. I think there's another slide. This integrated non-competitive ecosystem is exactly what will enable African countries to build credible, high-integrity methane inventories, identify mitigation opportunities, and meet global climate commitments. The future of methane in Africa is not one tool, it's the integration of all tools working together for better results. These platforms create powerful end-to-end methane system that supports accurate estimation, transparent verification, and consistent reporting, ambitious mitigation planning, and access to climate finance. Thank you. I hope I'm not taking all your time.
No, Evelyn, don't worry. I like myself with the hat. Don't worry. So thank you so much for the structured presentation and for all the wealth of information you have shared. And of course, I will ask everyone. So for questions, please share if any, and then share in the chat if any tools that came to update the social media profile. And I want you, Evelyn, to correct this with me. So this is what came in my head. It's kind of new alerts tool or like new tools alert or tools alert. Governments are using planning models, livestock and waste tools, and monitoring MRV tool system to find methane hotspots and test ways to cut it. So they are still learning. It's still new in our African continent, but methane is definitely on the radar on this continent. Do you agree with me on this post, Evelyn?
Yes, I do agree with you. And
excellent.
We need capacity building so that whatever somebody else is doing in another country, they can come and you do the capacity building. We also learn from whatever they're doing and we integrate it in our country. Yeah.
Okay, so we need capacity building. I added this, and if we just want to talk about feeling, so it's kind of methane now is a bit more watched and considered in the plans in the African continent. Thank you so much, Evelyn. And this is like bringing the question. So if we have these tools, we have this knowledge, so what can we do with? And the question here would be about the policy options. So how do we translate this into concrete policies and make concrete actions? So this is our segment 3. So we will explore policy options with Anderson Kabila. So Anderson, do you hear me?
Yes, Kenza, I can hear you.
Excellent. So Anderson, you are a seasoned scholar and research leader with deep expertise in environmental sustainability, climate change, and natural resource management. You have a proven track record of direct and high impact research and decision support systems that advance low carbon, climate resilient development across Africa. And you currently serves as a senior research fellow at Stockholm Environmental Institute Africa and as the research director for Africa, where you lead strategic research initiatives focusing on sustainable development, climate policy, and resilience building across the continent. And then you will take us in an exploration of sector-specific policy options to integrate methane reduction into national plans. And please don't forget the hat rule. Okay? And the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Kenza, for that kind introduction. So today, I'll be sharing some insights on countries' NDC policy instruments to mitigate methane emissions across Africa. Next slide, please. So as illustrated in Figure A, Africa's methane emissions are projected to rise substantially by 2060, with the absolute sector remaining the largest source of emissions, as you can see there in the Figure B. So based on this trend, some African governments have actually put in place a series of measures to mitigate methane emissions within their respective countries. This is actually demonstrated, as you can see there in Figure C, where approximately 38 to 58% of countries across Africa have established some sort of measurable target to reduce methane emissions in the livestock sector, which, as we know, accounts for the highest share of methane emissions on the continent. A comparative similar proportion of countries, approximately 33 to 60%, particularly now in the North, West, and Central Africa, have also set targets to some sort of reduce methane emissions in the oil and gas sector. Next slide, please. So to achieve these targets, approximately 38 to 56% of countries have some sort of prescribed some form of technological measures to either reduce, capture, or utilize methane emissions in the oil and gas and livestock sectors, respectively, as you can see there clearly in the figure C. In the next slide, technology adoption has been promoted through a series of incentive mechanisms where approximately 41 and 42% of countries have implemented such measures in the oil and gas sectors, as well as the livestock sectors, respectively. Next slide. So despite countries establishing all these methane reduction measures and targets, as well as introducing incentives to promote the uptake of methane mitigation technologies, just between 17 and 40% of countries, particularly as you can see there on the figure, in the Central, West, Southern, and North Africa, have actually implemented sort of comprehensive management plans to curb emissions in the oil and gas sector. On the other hand, the livestock sector, as you can see there in the lower figure, there's about 30% of countries in East and West Africa that have adopted similar plans, thereby limiting the ability to drive measurable methane emission reductions in the livestock sector. So as shown in the next slide, this situation is even more concerning with respect to methane regulatory frameworks, as less than 10% of countries in East, West, and Southern Africa have established some formal form of regulatory frameworks to enforce methane reduction initiatives in the rice, livestock, and waste sectors, thereby somehow limiting the ability to mitigate emissions. In contrast, methane reduction regulations are more prevalent in the oil and gas sectors, as you can see on that figure. Next slide, please. With the exception of West and Southern Africa, just approximately less than 20% of countries in other regions have provided cost estimates for the methane reduction initiatives, which is quite critical in order to actually seek for funding from the finance ministries or other donors. So with these limitations, it's really difficult to actually take those NDC plans and target some sort of donors who actually provide some sort of an investment case in terms of how much it will cost to actually fund some of these methane reduction projects. In the next slide, monitoring, reporting, and verification are predominantly conducted in the waste, oil and gas sectors, as you can see in that figure, and particularly in the North, in North and West Africa. This actually limits the ability of countries to track progress and provide some evidence that might guide policy adjustments, guide resource allocation, as well as future planning and investment decision making. So in conclusion, we've seen that methane emissions are really rising and that policy responses are some sort of uneven across the different regions. And that stronger regulatory frameworks are really needed to actually put in place some of this initiative, make them from policy into action. So the key message is that without stronger implementation, budgeting, and financing, those targets will just be on the shelf and will not deliver any results. Therefore, we have to act now in order to move from commitment to implementation. Once more, just want to thank you very much for your attention. I believe I've been quite below time, and over to you, Kenza.
Yeah, thank you so much. I didn't have the chance to put my hat. Thank you for this. So please, everyone, please update the social media wall of methane now with what Anderson shared with us, and Anderson checked with me. So it's kind of, we are having policy update, and some African countries are putting methane into their national plans. So methane is not leaving yet, but it might have some fewer places to hide. This is the pause. Is there anything, is it correct? Is there anything you want to add?
Yeah, so that's really a good question because African countries, they need to develop. So as they develop, they will definitely emit methane emissions. But the key question is, which pathways do we want to take, and what really are the cost, the benefit in terms of health, environment, and other aspects in driving economic growth while at the same time polluting the environment. And I think we don't want to go the China way, where they have to industrialize a lot of pollutions, and then now they are putting in a lot of money to actually clean the air. So it had to be sort of a very measured approach to ensure that as we develop, we put in place technologies which are really out there, to curb these emissions and then grow in a sustainable way.
Thank you so much, Anderson. And yeah, it's always complicated to have this balance and make it something doable with policymakers. Thank you so much, Anderson, for sharing. And I think now it's time to start the storytelling time. And of course, I don't need now to remind you about the question answers places and also the chat if you want to share anything on the wall. So moving forward with story time, and it's time for a story from Nigeria. And now we will look at how methane management tools have been applied to support planning and decision-making for methane-related interventions in Nigeria. And I will call Mr. Bala Bappa. Do you hear me? Mr. Bala Bappa, are you there?
Yeah, I can hear you clearly.
Excellent. So,
can you hear me?
Yes, definitely. Thank you for accepting the
invite. Can you hear me? I can hear you.
Excellent. Yeah. So, Mr. Bappa, thank you for accepting the invite. So, Mr. Bappa is a consultant with cross-sectoral experience in climate change and environment. He is the National Coordinating Consultant of the Climate and Clean Air Coalition, supporting the Ministry of Environment at the National Climate Change Council and other relevant sectoral ministries, departments, and agencies in Nigeria. He coordinated the development and implementation of the National Action Plan to reduce short-lived climate pollutants, including methane, to achieve NDC targets. He also serves as an in-country coordinator for the implementation of the Initiative for Climate Action Transparency, supported projects to develop a MRV system in Nigeria. So please, Mr. Bala, tell us what methane management tools are used in Nigeria and what practical lessons have emerged within the country. And of course, don't forget the rule of the hat, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Kenza. Let me start by thanking Kevin and the team for giving me opportunity to talk about LEAP IBC practical application and use in Nigeria. And also he said I should talk a bit about methane mitigation in Nigeria. So I've worked with Stockholm Environment Institute for over 10 years, and we have been working on various aspects of climate change, including the development of the National Action Plan, where they were the leaders in the implementation and development of the plan. And we've also worked with them on the LEAP IBC to build capacity in Nigeria. So as was said by my colleagues, LEAP is a software tool for analyzing energy systems and projecting greenhouse gas emissions. And it is also used to develop and compare baselines and mitigation scenarios. It also helps governments and researchers understand how different energy policies affect future. It is also widely applied for national climate planning, including nationally determined contributions, biennial transparency reports, and also long-term energy transition strategies. It is also been used across government institutions, regulators, academics, and development partners. Well, the current LEAP use in Nigeria, cut across several ministries, departments, and agencies, and also research institutes and universities. But it is mainly used in the National Council on Climate Change and the Department of Climate Change under the Ministry of Environment, which are primary, but also other
Mr. Bala?
agencies, especially the Ministry of Power, Ministry of Trade, and the
Mr. Bala, do you hear me? I think Mr. Bala has connection troubles. So, yeah, this is a good opportunity to ask everyone to answer the questions in Mentimeter while giving maybe some time to Mr. Bala to come to come back. He dropped out. If not, we can move to the other presentation while waiting for Mr. Bala to come again.
Hello, yeah. So sorry. I have
No worries.
connectivity issues here. Yeah.
Okay.
So I think I was trying to say that the LEAP IBC is also used across by regulators, policymakers, and academics, especially in our research institutes and universities. So there is a lot of growing interest in the energy, environment, and planning sectors for the use of the LEAP IBC. So in Nigeria, actually, in the climate planning processes, we used it in the development of our NDCs, especially the NDC 2.0, which was developed in 2021. The LEAP was used for the baseline and mitigation scenario emissions, and it was coordinated by the Department of Climate Change with technical support from partners, especially UNDP, which also, engaged the Stockholm Environment Institute to work with a consultant that developed the 2.0 NDC. We also use it to support our BTR emissions and air pollution co-benefit analysis. But this is also, with the support from Stockholm Environment Institute that built capacity for the use of the LEAP IBC. So Kevin said I should say something about methane mitigation in Nigeria. As you are aware, Nigeria is an oil and gas country, and we prioritize implementation of methane mitigation measures to reduce methane emissions in the country. The major sources of methane include oil and gas, Afolu, and waste. Just as Professor Rebecca showed us on her slides, you could see that there is progressive decrease in methane emissions in Nigeria. This is accounted by the policies and measures that are put in place to reduce methane emissions, especially, of recent, the CCAC supported Nigeria to develop methane reduction guidelines in the oil and gas sector, which is now currently under implementation. And this has a very significant effect in reducing methane in the oil and gas sector, including the reduction of gas flaring, reduction of fugitive methane emissions and venting, among others. And this has contributed, significantly in addressing our NDC targets. So, as I said earlier, LEAP is used in academia. Recently, one of our colleagues, Dr. James, used LEAP to model Nigeria's NDC pathways and energy transition in his PhD thesis, working closely with the Stockholm Environment Institute. And another case is one Professor Rona with his students have also done several energy and greenhouse gas models using the LEAP. And there is growing, interest by the university and researchers in the use of LEAP IBC. Then some of the gaps remain, advanced modeling techniques and then the data management. While, what we need to do is to need for a broader awareness among researchers and analysts, and also strengthening capacity and collaboration with definitely enhance national climate planning using the LEAP IBC. So, so far, this is what I have for us from Nigeria to address the application and use of LEAP, and also, some few words about methane mitigation in the country. Thank you. Over to you, Kenza.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mr. Bapa, for Nigeria's story, and congratulations for the work which has been done by Nigeria. So just again, like if we want to update the wall from Nigeria's story, so I will share with you my thought and then let me know if this is correct. So like Nigeria's story, planners used LEAP IBC and other tools to test how different policies affect methane and other air pollutants. Some scenarios really cut methane, but more work should be done. So do you agree with me?
Yeah, quite all right. I agree with you. There is widespread use of the LEAP, especially in preparation of our NDCs and also by policy planners. But then there is also need to build more capacity, especially in the advancement of advanced LEAP techniques. So this is where we always advocate. And of recent, the Climate and Clean Air Coalition and Clean Air Fund supported us through the Stockholm Environment Institute to build capacity through an online training. But then there is also another component of it that has hands-on training that will see some of our colleagues going to Stockholm Environment Institute for the hands-on training very soon.
Yeah, thank you so much for mentioning this. And I think capacity building is returning back in every discussion related to methane. And this is why by the end we will share our capacity building assessment survey to see where the community of practice can really intervene. And with this occasion also, I will ask the attendees please to answer questions in Mentimeter. This is also a place where we can see, as I said, it's our collective brain and what we can see your different perspectives in Africa around methane. So now we are traveling from Nigeria to Kenya, and it's a case study number 2 that we are presenting today. It's about short-lived climate pollutant plan and livestock methane. And Kenya indeed has advanced work on national planning for short-lived climate pollutants, including methane, and is developing practical measures in sectors such as livestock. And I will just invite Mr. Jerry Opondo to take us through this. Jerry, do you hear me?
Yes, Kenza.
Excellent.
Thank you
So
very much.
Jerry, yeah, welcome. So Jerry is a lawyer with long-standing experience in environmental governance and regulatory cycle development. He has played lead roles in the formulation of regional, national, and subnational environmental policies, laws, regulations, and standards across East Africa. So, Jerry, you have 10 minutes, and don't forget the hat rule, please. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Kenza. Indeed, I love the hat. I'll make sure you don't wear it though. Yeah, so a lot has been said about the LEAP tool. So I'll just, in the next few slides, try to demonstrate what Kenya has been able to do with the LEAP tool during the development of its national action plan for management of short-lived climate pollutants. Next slide, please. Next slide. Yes, please. So if you look at this particular slide, this is basically an extract from Kenya's national SLCP action plan. If you look at the baseline historical years, 2009 to 2020, then you basically realize that methane emissions doubled in Kenya. And much of these emissions were mainly from agricultural sources, the largest being from enteric fermentation, predominantly from cattle, and then also on solid waste management, whereby much of the methane emissions is attributed to poorly managed dump sites and landfills. In the next slide, it basically shows what the methane emissions in Kenya by source sector would look like in the historic period, of course, and also projected baseline scenario 2021 up to 2050. And basically what this shows you is that if we do nothing to mitigate methane emissions, then the growth is going to continue almost, in the same kind of a trajectory, doubling every decade or so. And because I already said that, agriculture and especially livestock and waste are the key culprits, in the next slide, then you look at the potential of abatement measures in the livestock sector. And in this particular case, this was modeled using the LEAP tool, where the abatement measures modeled include intensification of animal productivity, as well as measures for better manure management. And what you see there, especially for methane, by 2030, you achieve almost a third reduction, and by 2050, the reductions grow towards the half level. And in the next slide, if you look at measures in the waste sector, if we, for example, implement measures for integrated waste management, where we're talking about, for example, composting and waste to energy, as well as engineered landfilling, then by 2030, I think you are achieving slightly above half. And by 2050, you could achieve actually up to almost 80% methane emission reduction. However, in the next slide, if you look at the overall methane abatement from all mitigation measures across sectors beyond agriculture and waste, then you realize that by 2050, and that's basically the first bar there, we shall have reduced just above 20% of methane emissions. So what this story tells us is that in as much as agriculture and waste have the biggest potential of reduction, for us to achieve a bigger and global reduction of methane in Kenya, we need to enhance ambition for reduction across all sectors, from agriculture, waste, industry, and others. So in terms of what's happening on the ground at the moment, there are already efforts to get going with implementation of this of some of the actions outlined in Kenya's SLCP action plan. But again, this is rather slow. And whereas, again, it was mentioned earlier that, some of this ambition need to be reflected in country NDCs. If you look at Kenya's latest submission of its NDC last year, then you realize that as much as in the sectors we are trying to take some actions to mitigate methane, in the NDC, it is not very, very clearly articulated. So I think the point is that, we need to articulate this more and enhance ambition to achieve meaningful reductions. Thank you very much, Kenza. I think that's it from my end.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jerry, and wonderful timing as well. So Jerry directly correct with me the post on social media and tell me if this is correct. So we will have now Kenya update, and the short-lived climate plan is moving from paper to pasture. Dairy and livestock systems are testing better feeds, manure management, and productivity measures that would reduce methane emissions while supporting farmers' incomes. Did I get it right? Is there something I should change?
Yes, you got it right. And just like most African countries, we at the moment are not telling anybody to stop eating beef.
Okay, this is great to add indeed. Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Jerry. And I think now we are coming to start the analysis. So we went through understanding how methane is behaving in our continent, and then we talked about the different tools. Then we have heard we have policy perspective. Then we talked about case studies in 2 countries, and definitely there are more in other countries. So I think now we need to stop a little bit by the analysis and see how we can see this at AMCoP or from an AMCoP perspective. And this is why I am introducing now segment 6 of this webinar, which is stakeholders analysis and canvas of AMCoP. And this is what we will see with Anderson. So Anderson, are you here again? So I'm welcoming you again.
Yes, I'm
Anderson.
here.
Excellent. So Anderson, please take us through this analysis and the different canvas under the AMCoP, and the floor is yours.
Thank you again, Kenza. Yeah, so I will proceed with an analysis of the stakeholders that are actually embedded within the African Methane Community of Practice, with the aim of showing the different roles and how they actually, what roles they actually play to drive methane reductions within the continent. Next slide, please. Yeah, so this slide is a bit tiny, but I'll just give an overview of it. The slide actually highlights the different stakeholders within the African Methane Community of Practice, showing their different but sort of complementary roles in driving methane emission reductions in Africa. And as you can see, The key stakeholders constitute mostly of research organizations, the academia, the private sector, donors and development partners, international organizations, also, youth and CBOs, as well as, other regional organizations. So as I mentioned earlier, each of these stakeholders play their own role, but, when we look at it, comprehensively, the main goal is to reduce methane emissions across the different sectors that we've been talking about in this webinar. Next slide, please. Yeah, so the power and the interest of these stakeholders vary, to a greater extent. As you can see on the topmost right, we have governments and policymakers, multilateral and bilateral organizations, as well as donors and development partners with very high power and high interest, in the methane management across Africa. It's closely followed by, the private sector in terms of, we're talking the large corporations, industry associations, who have the money, thereby have that leverage in terms of power, but some sort of moderate interest in the investing or driving methane reduction across Africa. I think the key issue here is just because, many of these companies, they still haven't seen the business case of investing in methane reduction. And one of our work package, which I believe is work package 3, is actually looking at that, component. How can we develop business case that we can actually show to these companies for them to start investing in methane reductions, particularly in the oil and gas and the other sectors. And then we also have research institutions, the academia, knowledge brokers, innovation hubs that have some sort of high interest, like us right here within the community, but some sort of moderate power in terms of decision making. So we are just here to provide evidence to actually inform the decision makers who have the power to actually put in place measures or policies, incentives and regulations to see how we can drive and move this forward. Then other key stakeholders are, for example, the media with medium interests, which are also quite relevant here, as well as the general public, just to name a few, which of course they have, as you can see there, very low power and some sort of low interest. So how do we engage them as well in this very technical issue of methane management across Africa? And some of the strategies which we are proposing to engage the different stakeholders are, for example, for the policymakers, we really have to manage them closely. And by doing that, we should involve them in policy design, high-level dialogues, and formal partnerships. Because by doing so, we are actually ensuring that once we provide the evidence, then they have also been involved in the co-creation process, thereby enhancing the uptake of the final outcomes of the program. For the donor and development partners, we really have to manage them closely because they have very high power, in terms of the money, and they also decide the direction in which they want such a program to go. So we have to align the AMCoP objectives with their funding priorities and policy frameworks. We also just want to acknowledge again, the Global Methane Hub for actually, providing funding for this initial phase of the program, and we're looking forward to see how we could move to the next phase with them and bring on board other partners, donors, or private investors to actually drive the change that we want to see across the continent. As I mentioned earlier, we also have the private sector, the financial institutions. Here, we really have to engage them strategically by involving, some sort of public-private partnerships, provide some sort of incentives, as I mentioned earlier. What are the business cases that we can provide to the private sector to invest in the methane reduction in the different sectors? And what are some of the pilots that are quite innovative that we can showcase to them, but to actually see that is something that is good for the bottom line. Research and academia, for those that are not currently involved or those would have mentioned but are not currently engaging, how do we co-create knowledge and host joint workshops with them to actually, bring together best evidence and science to actually inform policy and decision making. And last but not least, the media will have to engage them by sharing, letting them share the success stories that we've identified, raise awareness to the public, as well as promoting climate literacy, especially among the general public who have very little knowledge about this thematic area. Next slide, please. Next slide. So these are some of the key Mentimeter questions, which probably we could have a look at later on. Just take a screenshot and then answer the questions. Then at the end, we will have to go. We can go through them and get the idea of where we are and where we're heading to. Next slide. So we went further to do some stuff, a SWOT analysis of the community of practice, starting with the opportunities and the threat. In terms of the opportunities, we found that countries are actually updating their NDCs, so there's an opportunity to actually embed new evidence and technologies that we've been providing into the enhanced NDCs. There's also an opportunity to leverage the new global methane finance to see how we could look for funds and bring in more funding into the program. Then the emerging carbon market is also a great opportunity that we can tap on. Currently, as I mentioned earlier, very few countries have have developed MRV frameworks and technology to actually monitor and track progress. So there's a great opportunity there. In terms of the threats, the oil and gas sectors who don't really see a business case for this, how do we present this to them to actually let them come on board and start investing, and other private sectors, other private sector partners. There's also competing climate finance priorities, in terms of either are we going for methane, loss and damage, adaptation. So how do we balance that competing priorities to actually drive our business across? Then low financial incentive. I think, Kenza, I can take more time now just because I had less time in my previous session. So then some of the trends are we have a deep knowledge in terms of generative science, strong links with AU and other multilateral organizations, access to continental networks, and high credibility in terms of the evidence that we generate. Next slide, please. Next slide. Yeah, looking at the weaknesses, as I mentioned earlier, limited funding, so we have to start looking for opportunities to bring in more funds. Low community level visibility, how do we ensure that the communities at the grassroots are actually visible in this platform? We are too reliant on donor-driven programs, and how do we try to diversify our funding mechanisms that go into foundations, the private sector, and limited private sector onboarding, which we'll have to look into. So I will not go into detail because of limited time. So next slide, please. So this is another Mentimeter question that you can answer. Take a screenshot. Then we'll talk about it at the end of the session. Next slide. So what is the business model that we intend to adopt to drive this change across Africa? We're looking at the different types of partners, which I've mentioned earlier. Some of the key activities, of course, which are quite clear that I've also mentioned. I'll not go into details. The value proposition, which I'll just throw more light on, is creating a collaborative platform to accelerate methane reduction in Africa, enhancing knowledge sharing across different stakeholders, strengthening political coherence and bring together different sectors, not to ensure that we don't work in silos, but work, as in partnerships. The different stakeholders that I've mentioned, the different type of relationships which probably will engage in will be regular engagement through forums like this ones, targeted support to member countries, and also engaging, the media, which I mentioned earlier. For the different type of stakeholders, I mentioned that before, which I will not come again into this. The key resources, one is quite relevant. The platform that we develop is also key. The knowledge we generate will be relevant to inform policy. And then the channels that we'll use to engage the stakeholders will be the website that you're currently generating, an online portal, webinars, conferences, and workshops. Next slide, please. And last but not least, these are the costs and the revenue streams which we anticipate to leverage on. Costs in terms of coordination, operational cost, research and data analysis, communication, capacity building. In terms of revenue streams, looking at donor and partner funding, probably some membership contributions, sponsored events, as well as bringing in private sector to actually invest in some of the innovative technologies that we will identify and share with them. So thank you very much, and I will hand it over to you, Kenza.
Yeah, thank you so much, Anderson, and definitely so many stakeholders and so many threats, but at the same time, so many opportunities and strengths that our country or our countries should consider. Thank you so much, Anderson. And now I really want to ask you to work more. I'm talking to the attendees to work more or to answer more of the questions that are in the Mentimeter. And I really want also to inform you that the link to the Mentimeter will be open for the coming 24 hours so that you can continue to answer the questions. If any idea just comes during this time, please feel free to share it on the Mentimeter. And as I said, Mentimeter is our collective brain, and throughout this 1 hour and 45 minutes, we discussed so many things, we pulled so many ideas, and that's why I want that we will revisit this collective brain and see what we can find there, what kind of ideas we do have all together, which path we can follow. And for this, I'm just calling Kevin to share Mentimeter results and main or a summary of these different results and main ideas. So Kevin is a professor working at Stockholm Environmental Institute at the University of York, UK. He has been working in African air pollution issues for almost 3 decades. He coordinated the integrated assessment of air pollution and climate change for sustainable development in Africa. And personally, he is my mentor. So Kevin, so the floor is yours. What came into our collective brain throughout this journey? The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Kenza. And thank you for the very kind words. Yes, so this morning, Kenza said to myself and Becky that imagine if Methane had a social media presence, and we loved that idea. So, so Methane is out there in social media, and it's looking for serious policy relationships across Africa and mitigation opportunities. So I'm going to go through a few things that I've picked up and try and give it to you in a social media way. So I'm not really a social media animal, but I shall try. So I am Methane, and if you can reduce me, I can give you climate, crop, and health benefits. So please get to know me. Looking after me can give you agricultural yields a boost. My followers say agriculture and waste are top sectors to watch, and that data, finance, and capacity are big barriers. Sounds about right from where I'm sitting. I am from sectors we live in every day. We need to improve everyday decisions in waste management, agriculture, and energy use. Now, I'm going to go to our collective brain from all the fantastic contributions we've had from our partners today. And this is what the Mentimeter brain is saying at the moment. It kind of trails off towards the end. So as Kenza said, if you can answer the last questions which ask you as a community what you need from us as the AMCoP coordinators, please fill in Mentimeter, and we'll keep it open, as Kenza says, for a while. But now I'm going to tell you basically what it's been saying so far. So Mentimeter shows, our collective brain shows that we have interest in this Zoom room from Kenya, South Africa, Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, Nigeria, and Uganda especially. And as we know, in Africa, there's 54 countries. So we need to expand our community. We need to get the word out there. And so we need to spread the word that reducing methane emissions is good for economies, human well-being, and the environment. So together we can help get this message out. So that's the first thing from the collective Mentimeter brain. Then our community sees waste and agriculture in particular as the main sectors for action, followed by charcoal and oil and gas. So waste and agriculture for Africa is seen as a key entry point by the people in the meeting today. Agriculture and oil and gas seen as the hardest to mitigate, followed by waste management and charcoal. So we know that we need to take action in agriculture. We know that we need to work with the farmers to help them increase their yields and profits while reducing the emissions. We know that this is possible, but we need to get the information to the people out there who can use it. So using social media, that's one way of reaching out to farmers across Africa is, did you know that, using this technique? And then we have some great case studies in Africa. I know there's some fantastic work in Ethiopia where they've worked with the productivity of cattle, etc., and they've seen improvements in methane emissions. So it can be done. And as Jerry said, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to stop eating beef, but we can produce the beef in a much more better ways. But it needs all the things we've heard about. It needs information sharing, quality data, capacity building, finance. It's a big job. And this is why we're trying to create this community, because we need to really work together to achieve it. So we've seen Evelyn shared with us a great talk about all the resources. We saw that there are many information resources across Africa. So we have many different types of initiative from Africa and internationally that are producing data that we need on methane emissions. But we've heard from the World Bank, we've heard from the CCAC, we've heard from UNEP and EDGAR and the International Energy Agency. All these players are producing data, but there is a real call, I think, as Stefania from the World Bank said, there's a real need for coordination. So AMCoP could play a key role in bringing these actors together to work out how best to share the information and to spread the information so that we can bring about change. And the same message goes for tools. So Evelyn showed us there are many different tools, from satellites in the air to the FAO, CCAC and LEAP model, etc. Again, all trying to move in the same direction, but they need coordination. So again, tools has the same message. AMCoP could help us move together in that direction. And then a couple of the last things from me. We need capacity enhancement to promote the provision of African ground truth data to inform policy. So someone asked in the chat, there's some great questions in the question and answer session. And one of the questions was, we've got these international emission inventories, but do we need, African data? And the answer is we absolutely do, because a lot of the international studies rely on emission factors and activity rates, which are from the international literature, and they don't always agree with what measurements on the ground in Africa under African conditions show. So yes, we do need much more capacity building and ground truth data from Africa itself. And this is why we need to build this community of practice. And a strong message coming from Mentimeter for methane is basically we have a lot of excellent activities on the ground in Africa, but to beat methane, they need to be coordinated more effectively. So that's the key message coming out of Mentimeter today. And then data accessibility is seen as a key problem in collaborating with the sectors. So we need to make sure that we understand how some data is very confidential in some regards in industry. So we need to make sure that we find ways of working with the data and the people with the data to bring about change. And that's basically what we've got so far from Mentimeter there. As I said, we need to encourage people to fill in the last questions, but that's what I've got for you. Hopefully that's helpful, Kenza.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I really would like to thank everyone who shared his thoughts with us, either on the chat, on the questions, or also in the Mentimeter. So while we came to the end, I really want to ask you to answer more, please. But this is just because we want to have more or the most of our reflection here. And I will ask my friends to share this slide. So in this slides, you have 4 questions that you will find on Mentimeter as well. And yeah, I understand that maybe we were so requesting and demanding today, and we asked so many questions, but I say this is for the good reason of having this collective brain. So we have 3 questions, 3 main questions. So first one is, what is the single most important action you would like to see in the next 2-3 years to accelerate methane mitigation in Africa? What is one opportunity for collaboration that participants in this webinar could act on after today? Which type of support would be most helpful for you? Data and tools, policy design, finance, or stakeholder engagement? So these are main questions that we want you to answer to add to the all collective brain. But however, at the end, we want to open it up to our emotions and our hearts, and then we are asking you to type one word in the, not in the chat, in Mentimeter, that captures what you are taking away from today. So you may be hopeful, concerned, energized, curious, just you can bring other adjectives or emotional adjectives more than these ones. So what is our mood? So please, on Mentimeter, keep in answering the questions, including these 3 questions. Share with us your emotions after this webinar, and let us keep in being hopeful. From our side, as Community of Practice, our way forward would be to have a website soon. We will let people know through LinkedIn. We have your emails, so from now on you are part of our mailing list, and also we are asking you please to join our LinkedIn. And capacity building definitely came and is coming all the time. So please share or fill the survey that we are sharing on the chat again. So please, my colleagues, share the survey related to the capacity building assessment. So please fill this capacity building assessment so that we can know, as Community of Practice, what is needed to build capacities around methane in Africa. Most important thing, fill the survey, continue answering the questions, and I'm very grateful to you being here, and I want to thank all my colleagues who contributed to this webinar, the panelists, and also the people we didn't see and we didn't hear. So mainly Simon, Paul, Terenzi, and I'm afraid I will forget someone. So I will just go back to the list and see who are there so that I can name them. So Paul, Victor, Lawrence, and Terenzi. So thank you so much for your help, and thank you for the attendees for being here, and we will meet again. Yes, Kevin, I forgot something. Kevin?
No, Kenza, I was just trying to applaud you and I pressed the wrong buttons.
Yeah, thank you so much. So maybe let's upload all of us. Let's upload ourselves. Thank you so much for everything, and thank you for being here. And see you, inshallah, in next events. Goodbye, everyone. Bye bye.
Goodbye and thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye.